Howdy, folks. I'm Buffalo Bill Cody, known as the Man of the West, credited with creating the vision of America's settlement of the Great Plains as the conquest of the Wild West. I'm here to share my story of development and formation as a leader. My role in creating that vision began through what was written about me and my adventures on the Great Plains in scores of highly popular dime novels. My leadership was demonstrated through my Wild West show, a series of shows that toured and performed reenactments of dramatic events from the plains before 50 million people in North America and Europe over a 30-year run. The actions of the Calvary, settlers, and cowboys were heroic. The villains were white bandits, gunslingers, and Native Americans, who we called Indians. I will continue to refer to Native Americans as Indians, as that is the way we refer to them in my times. That name is part of our history. This series is critical to me. Why? Because of the immense public and scholarly interest in my life, a multitude of books and articles have been written about me. I have detractors who claim most accounts about my life are a myth. That's offensive enough. But even more disturbing are claims that I was a little more than a frontman created by clever publicists. That leadership of my show was in the hands of others, often a critic himself taking credit. As I've never backed down from a challenge, I'm here to set the record straight. Also, I will outline the times, events, adventures, and people that were critical to my development in the context of my times. Context being another word for history. Talking history may sound distracting, but given what I know about the study of history in your time, a little history will be helpful. In fact, it's gotten so neglected that many of you don't even know who I am. In this segment, I'll discuss the period in which I scouted for the Calvary in the last of the Indian Wars, 1865 to 1895. Actually, the struggle between Indians and settlers for land had periodic episodes of war. They began in the 1600s and finally ended in the 1920s. To begin, it's September 1865. I'm 20. The Civil War has ended. I'm mustered out of the Union Army. For me, time to get married, which I did. Try and become a homebody. Run a hotel. Didn't work. I inherited my father's wanderlust and revealed a weakness. Poor personal finance management, a weakness that dogged me my entire life. I was quickly persuaded that I was destined to lead a life on the plains. Besides, I could never resist the call of the trail. The hunt. Talking story around the campfire. The starlit sky. The open plains. I was returning to where I already had extensive experience. How extensive was my experience? At a very young age, I traveled widely with my father during his Indian trading days and met and learned Indian ways. I worked wagon trains transporting settlers west. While working wagon trains to protect my friends, I shot and killed my first Indian. I was 11. I trapped and traded furs, experiencing the wilderness. At age 12, I survived alone for a month during the winter in the wilderness, immobile and nursing a broken leg. Some days I went without any fire at all. I ate frozen meat. I melted snow in my mouth for water. I worked as a stagecoach driver I rode for the Pony Express. Yes, I know. Critics saw my participation in the Pony Express as myth. Regardless, my horsemanship, durability, endurance, bravery, critical characteristics of being a Pony Express rider go unquestioned. I experienced and dealt out violence. I saw my father stabbed. I was shot at when fleeing pro-slavery pursuers, pursued by Indians on the wagon trail, and as a cavalryman in the Union Army. Meanwhile, Reconstruction of the southern states began. With peace, thousands of settlers poured into the plains to claim land, courtesy of the Homestead Act. Settlers competed with the Indians over land and resources, with clashes of culture and customs. The Indians of the plains were dependent on buffalo and hunting them, living a nomadic life, while settlers wanted to farm and ranch or extract precious metals like gold and silver. At every step, settlers forcing Indians to concede their land, killing off buffalo, destroying the plains Indians' way of life. Inevitably, conflict followed and grew. The role of the Army underwent significant change, from fighting Confederate forces to conducting police operations on the plains, an area where my skills and experience were critically needed. Having returned to the plains, I hunted buffalo for the railroad. It was in that capacity that I became known as Buffalo Bill. Soon thereafter, conflict between Indians and settlers turned to violence. The Army was forced to act, at first by launching campaigns to demonstrate force. The aim, coerce Indian tribes to sign treaties hoping that peace could be achieved through treaties. It was not. Let me just add, every Indian outbreak that I have ever known resulted from broken promises and broken treaties by the government. The Army periodically needed some scouts when hostilities arose. Because I was a veteran, the Army knew me and my capabilities and hired me to scout. In between campaigns, I worked various jobs. Some were for the Army. I even worked in the stables, restacking hay for the cavalry's horses as a way by which the Army found to keep me on the payroll. The first military campaign to demonstrate force in northwestern Kansas was led by General William Tecumseh Sherman, famous or infamous for total warfare. During the Civil War, Sherman led the Union Army's march to the sea, a scorched earth campaign that included burning Atlanta. I was hired to scout, carry dispatches. During that campaign, I rode with Sherman for 12 miles, and we became fast friends. He asked me all manner of questions on the way, and I found that he knew my father well and remembered his tragic death in Salt Creek Valley. The campaign succeeded, resulting in a peace treaty which, like almost all, was doomed to failure. Sherman went on to become General of the Army, the highest post in the military at the time. He did not forget me.